And welcome back to On the Record. In studio, Kenneth Deere and Joe Delarone of K103 Board. Before we went to the break, we were talking about the money and the funding and where should it go. And I know that I said earlier that you're saying that it was for that, and he's saying it's for this. But what do we do at the end of the day? Let's say that Brian is adamant and the radio station doesn't get the money at all. If I donated, can I get my money back because I wanted it to go to radio station and I didn't want it to go to somebody else?
I think you'll have to ask Brian Goodley. If you bought a ticket for the game at $20, you should maybe ask her for your $10 back. You might want to do
because some people would say that I support the radio station and I gave money because it was going to the radio station, and if it's not going to the radio station, then I want my money back. But how do you figure that out? You know what I mean? Who gave what?
The point about all this is unnecessary. This whole argument, this whole debate was on if Brian had just released the funds and give it to the radio station, would have put it into it's a safety. Into a fund. Brian would be on the board to make sure that it wasn't spent for operations. I mean, there's 7 board members on there, and that's and then if the board wanted to change that, then Brian can fight it there from inside and making sure it wasn't. It's from outside. It's just gossip, innuendo, all kinds of accusations but inside the board where decisions are made, that's where you're supposed to be, and that's what he got elected to do. But he left instead, and that's what decisions.
So let's talk about that.
The buck stops with the board.
So Brian left. What was the purpose, or not the purpose, but why did Brian leave though?
Ask him.
I mean, there's a lot of. I read the article in the Eastern Door. I mean, it pretty well says it in there. One of the reasons.
It's not an article. It's an ad.
The ad that he put in there.
That's right.
Regardless of the ad that he put in there. Or the advertising that he put in there, he says it in there, is that there's no direction, and it's they're getting rid of native people. They're keeping hiring non-native people. They're asking the some community members for funding or donations for salaries and all these things that are going on.
All that happened after he left the board. That didn't happen while he was on the board. He had left. No, and he made some. He agreed with all this. He agreed to for certain issues that were in there. Like he complains about maybe about Chuck Barnett, but he was adamant that Chuck was the person that we needed at the radio station. He agreed with those along the part while he was on the board. All these issues that came after he left the board. The board is very fine on dealing with them. We didn't lay off a whole bunch of Native people. We didn't. We laid off many more non-natives to restructure.
Yeah, but in our community, we don't care about the people that are not from the community.
No, but
we care only about the people from the community that have been there. And I don't want to get into a contest of who's right or who's wrong. I'm just telling you. I'm just saying what's out there. And obviously, you have to defend your position. And some of the employees may or may not have a lawsuit pending or have gone to court. I don't know. I'm hearing different things about that there was a judgment. So I don't want to get into a lot involved in that in case there is, and I don't want to put you in a position in that unless you.
Well, first of all, in terms of staffing issues, the board of directors has its hands tied, and any organization has its hands tied in what it can and can't say. There are guidelines, and you cannot freely speak of people's dismissals unless it's something very public that someone puts out there.
But what's the mandate of the board? Most boards, and this is the reason why I said it, most boards are either there for policy or direction, but it seems that the board at K103 is a management board in all senses. It deals with all the employees, it deals with all the HR issues, it deals with everything. So some people say that it's the board that's running it and not the management that's running it. So I'm just asking that question because I don't know.
K103 is a governing board, and we have staff. In this case, it's either a program. We haven't had a station manager in years, for many years. So it makes it more difficult for the board to, the board does have to take on some management decisions, for sure. There's no doubt, but the station can't afford to have all the staff that it really needs to. We need a program manager and a station manager. At no time, I can't remember the last time the radio station had both, and we mostly only have program managers. And the staff is responsible. The management is responsible for the staff. We do not interfere in the staffing, and that's their job. The management, if they have a question, they come to the board, and then we would give them direction. But that's the role of the board is to manage the managers. And we don't go into the studio and tell us you can't say this or you can't say that or you can't do this. We don't do that.
I guess the information out there is different. That that people are saying that the board is entrenched into the operations of there, and I'm just don't kill the messenger.
No, we're not.
Not at all.
Yeah. We're not. We're just telling you.
Yeah.
What it is, and if somebody can give concrete examples of board interference, then bring those concrete examples. Don't just say, well, the board interferes.
Yeah.
Give us a concrete example, and we'll see if that is interference or whether there's something else. The board, members of the board do volunteer, because when we're stuck, I know Gene has gone on the air at times because there's absentees and people get sick, or I know board members have been in the station converting the music from CDs into electronic. I mean, Joe and Gene and Mike Sky, I spent hours on the weekends on their own time, converting, going from 20th century technology to 21st century technology.
Yeah, yeah.
And so the board volunteers, and so they have to be in the station to do that. But they're not there telling the staff what to do. We tell the management what to do, and they carry out. And that happens for all boards.
I mean, I say that a lot of people and don't really, I guess, know how the operations work in regards to media, whether it be paper, television, radio, and what goes into it and what's always happening behind the scenes. You hear a lot from employees that aren't there anymore, and I'm no different. I'm still I still have some reserves on my past careers, rights and wrongs, that whether or not a court says I'm right, it is another thing, but it still becomes a big issue though when it's being put out in every media. You're hearing so much about it that, but why?
Well, as Kenneth said off the top of the show, when somebody buys a 2-page ad, then it becomes news, and I guess, what's basically being said here is, if you have money, you'll make news.
You know what? That's a bad.
Really,
but
that's what it is.
But you're right. But you're right. But it's a bad argument coming from you, because you're working for one of the biggest paid advertiser in this community, is the Mohawk Council. So it's the same thing. So you're going to make news. It comes to the same thing. I mean, and don't tell me that it doesn't, because a lot of people would beg different. And Kenneth begs different from that. I know his opinion is.
I think there's a big
I've seen
difference
it in here, but
I think there's a big difference there myself.
Anyway, I'm not going to debate that, but it does come to that. You can pay for an ad or an.
Wait a minute, you're not going to debate it, but you brought it out there. You
but
make a point that I.
But it's true.
No, yeah, but it is.
It's an opinion on one. It's a one-sided opinion.
It's a one-sided opinion, but it's disguised as a news article. The way it's laid out, the way it looks like a news article, and the media has a responsibility and a duty to balance that, to make sure that people just can't pay by paid advertising, make political statements, because this is a political issue, and a social political issue, and take it for gospel that what is in that paid ad is true. It's the media has a responsibility to challenge. One of the reasons why I started the Eastern Door was to try to combat these signed and unsigned letters that were in your mailboxes, And you remember that. Those of you, it used to be terrible. It used to be bad in this community when you get some real slanderous stuff coming in your mailbox. The Eastern Door was made to try to combat that kind of stuff.
And you still see anonymous letters and.
You still, but
we'll talk about that, and I'll give you a chance to respond, Joe, on what I said about the media, that with the DMCK. And it's not an attack, but it's a correlation of the two. And we'll do it right after these messages.